Something interesting is happening as Bangladesh is voting in a controversial election for the first time since Sheikh Hasina's removal. The US and Chinese ambassadors are engaging in a war of words. US has expressed concerns over China's increasing influence in Bangladesh and offered own missile defense system as an alternative, while China has warned the US against singing the same old tune and making remarks with ulterior motives. This follows a year of intense lobbying by both sides, holding separate meetings with both BNP and Jamaat leaders. But what does this mean for India? Remember, Bangladesh recently signed a defense agreement with China to establish a drone factory near the Indian border and is looking at acquiring the Pakistani JF-17s. The US says that it wants close India-Bangladesh ties, but Hasina has warned about US attempts to establish a base in Bangladesh. So have China and US picked their sides? What does this mean for India? Joining us live, Ambassador Bashmati Mukherjee, former diplomat. Also with us, Major General Gigi Dwivedi, Strategic Affairs Analyst. Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, is joining us live. Joyita Basu, Editor of the Sunday Guardian, is also with us on the broadcast. Let me make a start with you first, Ambassador Mukherjee. This is, of course, a moment of reckoning for Bangladesh with the polling, of course, underway. I think, in fact, it's concluded now in the evening hours of today. But all eyes now on the results. Of course, the way forward for Bangladesh will be determined. But interestingly, as far as the foreign policy of Bangladesh is concerned, it's mostly China and the US who are most interested in what's going to be the outcome. Why is that, Ambassador Mukherjee?
Well, it seems, Uday, that the Americans, who are always a little slow in waking up to reality, particularly under Donald Trump, have finally realized that despite the US deep state reportedly undermining and masterminding the coup that brought down Hasina, her successors seem to be dancing with the wrong kind of enemies of United States, notably the Chinese, who are hand in glove with the Pakistanis. In this particular case, there was a very interesting meeting with the American ambassador, with the Jamaat, earlier with the BNP, and the Americans have also reportedly seen with concern the fact that the Chinese have been given very favorable treatment by their own man from Washington. That's Mohammed Yunus, who's supposed to be an American puppet, seems to be embarking on a game of biting the hand that feeds him. There's reportedly a drone factory being built by the Chinese very close to the Bangladesh-India border. They've been given all kinds of favorable treatment for many of their defense programs, etc. They want to buy fighter jets with the help of the Pakistanis. One wonders how a bankrupt state like Pakistan is in a position to be acting as a go-between between Bangladesh and China. But definitely it's a very interesting development. But what we need to remember is, it doesn't matter what the Americans and the Chinese do. We surround Bangladesh from three sides. And whatever their foreign policy is towards the United States or China, it cannot avoid India. We are all over the place. We surround them from three sides. As far as the United States is concerned, if they have understood finally that the Chinese, thanks to the Americans, are busy trying to take over Bangladesh, a very strategic country as far as India is concerned, it would be very much in our interest to cooperate with the Americans if they try to decrease Chinese influence in Bangladesh, offer aid, etc., etc. This is something we need to see once we get to see the election results. There are all kinds of wild conspiracy theories are flying around Bangladesh. Some say that 45 million people voted in 1 hour in the last hour of voting. Others say that the Hindus were intimidated and not allowed to come. Others say that there's a sharp drop in women voters. Why has that happened, etc. There are those who are predicting that maybe the Jamaat will form a government. There are others who say that Mohammed Yunus, who actually looked like a man when he cast his ballot as if he was going for a second marriage, so happy, so triumphant, he must be looking at a future with him as permanent president because there's a referendum also. So we have to wait and see till tomorrow as to which way it goes. Uh, if the BNP is able to form a majority, it may be easier for us to deal with them. Although the Jamaat, interestingly, is now saying they want to have good and friendly relations with India. But certainly, this development of the war of words, is a good development for India. It's good that the Americans have finally understood the actual game being played by Yunus and his cohorts in Bangladesh, and that Bangladesh is in dire risk of descending into
Yes.
civil war.
Well,
just like
yes. No,
in
this
Afghanistan.
this election is an important moment for the neighborhood, Major General Dwivedi. Of course, India is interested in its outcome, but China and the US, why have they become such interested parties, and how could this election also determine which way Bangladesh swings, either to the west or to the east?
Take a larger picture and as to how Bangladesh is strategically so important because it sits on the crossroads between South Asia and Southeast Asia, and it is a gateway to the Bay of Bengal. The issue is that I think we have taken Bangladesh for granted and our position as well as for granted. In fact, Chinese had started to make inroads way back in 90s when I was a defense attaché in China. I saw the kind of bonhomie between Bangladesh and China and the kind of defense equipment that are flowing into Bangladesh since the early 2000s. So the point is, Chinese are not investing suddenly. They have been at it for quite a long time. Now, the Americans are also very interested because you see America's national security strategy, which categorically states that America would contain Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific, and therefore Bay of Bengal is a part of the Indo-Pacific. So therefore, Americans have also adopted now, I would say, hyper-active approach. They have signed the trade agreement. They are offering the aircraft, Boeing 14 of them, and they are also offering military equipment. But I think the Americans are always a step behind the Chinese. Now, what is India's concern? I don't think we have been able to take advantage of our geography while we surround Bangladesh from all three sides. Did we pay attention to the Siliguri corridor syndrome? No, we have not done any demographic, shifting in that critical area. We should have made corridors across the Bangladesh to connect northeast. We haven't done it. So we have always, a reactive mode. So what is this situation now? Point is that superpower rivalry is playing out in Bangladesh. Both these superpowers are on it to ensure that they gain the influence. For India, firstly, I don't know which way the elections will go. In fact, I just done an article for First Post. It could either be Bangladesh comes back on the democratic track or it goes the East Pakistan way, erstwhile if Jamaatis come into power. But the point is, we need to play our cards and we need to be proactive because Bangladesh elections do not only impact Bangladesh, they impact India's securities and India's concerns, especially as far as China is concerned. Now we need to look at what trilateral is emerging between Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, and the kind of the military exchanges that have taken place between Pakistan and the Bangladesh army, and not to forget what is happening in Myanmar. So this quad could actually emerge. I think India's diplomacy needs to now shed off the old presumptions and we need to start with the new playbook because the situation is actually very, very complex and dynamic. But until we really take a proactive approach, I think we will be on the reactive mode, and that is not very good for India because please remember, now we need to shift focus from the western borders to the eastern side. We need to contemplate Operation Tandoor,
Yes.
Operation Tandoor, and look at the Operation Tandoor that is developing in the northeast and especially in the Bangladesh region.
Yes, and Professor Nalapat, what do you make of these Chinese delegations that continue to, look at these polls very closely, the meetings that they've held with Jamaat and others? The US also followed that, in fact, with a meeting with the Jamaat, but also interestingly, the deal with Bangladesh came so soon before polling as well. What are we to read into all of this? Professor Nalapat?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Professor Nalapat, did you hear my question?
Yeah, yeah. Look, Uday, the fact is that Cold War 2.0 is definitely on. I mean, those of us who have been talking about it, is between the US and China now as the main protagonist. Cold War 1.0 was between the US and the USSR, which collapsed in 1991. So this is going to be the same situation of either of the disputants want the other to collapse. And in my view, from India's point of view, it's better the US than China. For one thing, we have a vibrant Indian American community there that are ambassadors for India. We don't have that in China. And second thing is, as has correctly been said by the military expert, the Pakistani influence is very strong now in Dhaka, and Pakistan is not good news for India in any way whatsoever. So now the good thing is that the Americans realize the Chinese are basically out to get them, to defeat them, and to take away their primacy, and now they are battling with them all over the world. They are throwing China out of the Panama Canal, the Suez, all these areas. Soon it will be the South China Sea, and definitely now Bangladesh, as has been correctly pointed out, is a highly strategic location for India as well. We can't afford Bangladesh to go the Chinese way, and of course, it shouldn't go fully the American way either. But I think therefore we have to be careful, but we have to be ensure that our interests are protected. But one thing is very, very clear. We have to be very, very sure our borders are secure and that any gaps in policing of the borders is filled, because through the borders, all kinds of terrorist influences can come in, as indeed they have in the past. Unfortunately, the state government seems to have done very little to stop all that. So I think the reality situation is Cold War 2.0 is very much on. This battle is going to continue until one or the other party is dissolved. And in my view, we should prefer the Americans. And as far as China is concerned, we're not talking of dissolution of China. We're talking of dissolution of the communist system in China, just as the communist system in Russia collapsed. So I would like to say, Uday, this is a fascinating example of Cold War 2.0. And as far as India is concerned, definitely we need to make our preferences clear. And our preference, in my view, should unequivocally be the United States. Now, recently, Trump has warmed up to us and he has been very friendly towards Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi has reciprocated equally warmly. He has played a very deft game of diplomacy. So I think all in all, there is no question in my mind that we have to ensure that the US wins the struggle, this global struggle. And we are now become a power with influence in several countries, and that influence can only grow in the future thanks to a higher rate of growth. So I believe, Uday, that the tides are in our favor, and we have to ride the tide, and we have to ensure that we pass through the storms and that we come out safely into the harbor of double-digit growth. Thank you, Uday.
Joyita Basu, if I can quickly rope you in here. Now, for India, how important is it to see as well whether our neighbor pivots, tilts towards China, or whether it tilts towards the United States of America? There have been many theories that the ouster of Sheikh Hasina was something that the US had overseen. There's a new ambassador that's been appointed there. We've also seen the trade deal get concluded. But then China also has continued to stay active in the region. Now, Do you believe it will be the Jamaat which could end up swaying towards China? Will the BNP tilt towards the US, or is it going to be the other way around? What do you view as being the main factor that will decide the new administration's position vis-a-vis its foreign policy?
Well, I would prefer if whichever administration comes to power, that they would be tilting towards India. I mean, the China and the US, they come later. Because even if China is kind of right next door, think of the US, there's something called the tyranny of distance. But from whatever we are hearing, it seems what Bangladesh is basically trying to play both sides. I mean, while they are talking about, in that Cox's Bazar area and Chittagong area, they are talking in terms of the US having a presence over there. But when it comes to China, they want China's presence along the border of India, especially, say, Lalmonirhat, that particular air base that is there near North Bengal, which is the Siliguri corridor, which is known as the Chicken's corridor in common parlance. They want China stationed there. They want Pakistan there. And even along the border, that is where, and especially, say, for example, the northeastern, they want insurgency to be revived in the northeast. And how do they do it? China is totally interested in that area. China has a presence in Myanmar, it's Burma. So they have a base over there. And if they open up that area for the Chinese to ensure that, some kind of insurgency is allowed to take place. I mean, basically, the sole interest and the sole, I would say, focus of Bangladesh is basically to use these powers and to needle India, to try and disintegrate India. So I don't see it as an either-or situation. I see it as Bangladesh playing both sides, and I think the Americans are foolish enough to fall for that. Now, it has to be remembered, I think Bangladesh, the US wants control over the Bangladeshi government in terms of, say, they of course want the Chinese out. But the thing is that right now they cannot do that. But they are looking at Bangladesh in terms of strategically important, in terms of the access to the sea, in terms of mineral wealth, oil exploration. These are the things. And there is a solid, the problem is with the US is that there's a solid pro-Muslim Brotherhood Jamaat lobby in Washington, D.C. And perhaps that has largely to do with the kind of money that Qatar has been pouring into D.C., because of which there is a significant belief. In fact, if you read the kind of commentary that is coming out from DC in particular, they think that Jamaat is a force of moderation. Now, just imagine how nonsensical they are. As a result, what is going to happen, Uday, is that chances are Jamaat or a Jamaat-backed national government, where it could even happen that this Tariq Rahman becomes Prime Minister. The reins of power are in Jamaat's hands. It's a given that Yunus will become president, because that is what the referendum is talking about. So at the same time, this government will be giving out these bases and ensure that China kind of finds its feet in terms of, where they can disturb India. I mean, the problem is, is the US also planning to disturb India? Then you realize there's a convergence of interests, where China's interests, US interests, Bangladeshi interests all converge. That is India's problem.
Yes. Let me take that back across to Ambassador Bhashwati Mukherjee as to which party will be tilting towards which foreign power abroad. How are you interpreting things, Ambassador Mukherjee? Which way is BNP likely to sway? Which way is Jamaat likely to sway? If Jamaat is in an alliance, what will be that outcome? If it's a minority government, a hung house, what are we likely to see?
As far as BNP and Jamaat are concerned, they are two faces of the same coin. One face we have dealt with earlier when Khalida Zia was Prime Minister. So we have some experience of dealing with the BNP. The Jamaat we've always known as a party of collaborators, those who collaborated with the Pakistanis before 71 and after post 71, etc., who have suddenly become respectable. I actually believe that both Jamaat and BNP will ostensibly, in the beginning, publicly posture that they want to have good relations with India, but that the presence of Sheikh Hasina in India is an impediment to those good relationships. Both will take the same position. I reiterate, after hearing Joyita, that it is in India's core national interest to side with US on this matter, because the Americans, despite their foolish contradictions, thanks to Donald Trump, actually want to bring China down. Their strategic conundrums leave many people wondering what they want, but clearly that is their option. They want to bring China down, which is why they are finally making a kind of pivot towards India. Therefore, I don't think United States under any government will regard China as a friend. Therefore, if they've decided to take China down a peg or two and muscle into Chinese territory, that will put the Pakistanis in a difficult position, because the field marshal wants to play both sides. Pakis are famous for that. And even the Qatari influence and Qatari money has its limits, because Qatar, for instance,
Yes.
does not want
Yes.
an attack on Iran.
Yes.
Therefore, I believe, to conclude,
Okay.
that we should actively encourage
Okay.
United States to get involved in Bangladesh.
But Major General Dwivedi, this warning by Sheikh Hasina that the US wants to set up a base in Bangladesh as well. How are we to take that warning?
Well, Uday, America had all stated very clearly when Sheikh Hasina was the Prime Minister that they wanted a base in St. Martin's Island to keep a check on the Bay of Bengal and also on the Strait of Malacca. I like to make 3-4 important points. Firstly, when you look at from the Bangladesh, what are their strategies? Their strategy is to play out their geographic location and ensure that they are keeping the candle burning, both along with the Americans, Chinese, and also Pakistanis. Don't forget them. Pakistan is a very important player, and therefore, ultimately, what I feel is they're going to fall into the web, because they'll be exploited both by Chinese, by the Americans, and by Pakistanis, and they're going to get trapped in this whole situation, because right now they have one-point agenda: to exploit America, to exploit China, Pakistan, to actually deal out India, and that is what is a major issue is. But I don't think that game is going to run very far, because at the end of the day, everyone is going to take out their pound of flesh from the Bangladesh and whichever government that is in play. But the point is, at the end of the day, we are going to have unstable, Bangladesh, which is not to our interest, and therefore we need to work out with America to ensure that certain degree of stability is in Bangladesh, which suits our national interest. Uday.
All right. Well, we are out of time, I'm afraid. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion. Let's slip into a short break.